5:02. This is July 8th. We have a confirmation for a quorum. Yes, we do. Thank you. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance for the United States flag and for our Texas flag. Pledge of Allegiance. One nation. Texas flag. We'll take a moment of silence at this time, please. Thank you. Number D, workshop or public hearings. We don't have anything, Marilyn.
None at this time.
Okay. We have anyone signed up for public comments? No public comments. Letter F on our agenda today is consent agenda items. I would like to make a statement about that. We have 26 items for consent. These items, just so the public will know, have already been screened by myself with Dr. Holman with administration. But this is the time, if anyone has any questions on any of these items, to we can pull them out and discuss at a later date. If not, I am going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda items. We have a motion?
I hereby motion.
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. Cowan, a second by Dr. Salmota. All those in favor of this item, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All those against? Okay, this item unanimously passes. Thank you. We'll move on to G, items for individual consideration. We'll start with Ms. Gilbert with the general manager's report.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, at this time, you can look in your actual board calendar, and I just want to make a couple of announcements. We had our SRWA meeting on July the 1st. Today is our regularly scheduled board meeting, and the PubCap meeting will be on July the 17th. Just for the members of the audience and the public to be aware, we have our next SRWA board meeting on August the 5th and BPB board meeting scheduled for August the 12th. Our annual PubCap dinner is on August the 21st. So if you have any other questions on things or events, at this time, please let me know, and we can discuss the July, August, and September meetings. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of the things on here. Any questions?
Any questions or comments or concerns from the board member? Okay, we'll move on. Ms. Gilbert.
All right, moving on to the next item, we have industry and PB updates. And I just want to say that we really missed the hurricane that was coming our names. We're in the cone of path of, and everybody was working through the holiday weekend to plan. Unfortunately, there's been some other neighboring systems that have been affected. So we have released some of our contract crews to help some of those neighboring systems to work on some of the damage that they have been experienced by Beryl. We haven't experienced any system damage here. As you can see, it's bright and sunny outside. Our system is good. We are prepared. Next time, and it may not be like that, and we may be the ones who are going to be requesting mutual aid assistance. Some of the other industry updates that I have, the staff reports will be covering in more detail. We have the drought update along with other questions that members of the board have asked us to include. And so at this time, I don't have any other comments unless you have any questions or additional for PEB and industry updates.
Marilyn, tell us a little bit about, we have crews going up to the Houston area? Or?
Not our own internal, but we have outside labor crews that we have released and allowed them to respond through our mutual aid assistance programs.
Okay, who's responsible for those?
Their responding company where they go and start performing work at.
Okay. Any questions or comments about that? All right, so on to number two, consideration. We don't have any items being pulled out of consent. Staff reports, we can start the presentations with a drought update. Mr. Garcia?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Guadalupe Garcia. I'm the Water Resources Administrator for Brownsville PUB. This evening, I'll be going over the drought update. It's a quick update here, just to provide some information. As of June 29th, 2024, we are currently at 19.0%. It did go up from previous readings. If you can see off to the far left of your screens there, the previous readings were at 18.5 with June 22nd, 18.2 June 15th, and 18.5 with June 8th. So we did get from the month of May ended at 19, and June is looking like we're ending at 19. So it took a little dip, throughout the month, but we came back up. So it pretty much from month to month it plateaued at 19.0%. Just as a reminder, we do have that drought stage 3. It is at 15. So if we do get to that 15 percentile between the Amistad and Falcon U.S. share, we will be initiating drought stage 3. But as of right now, we did have that plateau. These numbers do encompass the numbers from Tropical Storm Alberto and also the following system from that tropical storm. They provided very little rain, however, just enough for us to plateau from month to month. And with that, I do end my drought update report. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I just have a quick question. I know
Yes, sir.
Mexico did receive a lot of rain from Alberto. I know the Monterey area specifically, but they're not really part of our watershed, right? That water, in terms of the 1944 tree, that's outside of the scope.
So a lot of the rain that landed in Monterrey, the Monterrey area empties out into the reservoir from Mexico. It's called El Cuchillo. That one, unfortunately, the reservoir empties out into Rio San Juan. That empties into the Rio Grande at Rio Grande City below Falcon. So unfortunately, that water was not able to be captured by Falcon Dam for these percentages.
Thank you.
Thank you for that response. Anything else on this topic? Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Okay,
We'll
thank-
move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn, we'll move on to letter B.
Yes, letter B, we have Mr. Mark Dombrowski, who's going to be presenting, and this was something that we felt it was important to give an interim reporting and you on the various different projects that we are working. And now that we're going to enter budget season, you'll get to do that. Mark?
Good evening, Mark Dombrowski, Chief Operating Officer. So thought this was timely to bring up. As you know, this year our CIP is about $91 million. Currently, we've expended about $25 million of funding out of that. And we're looking to bring in a more realistic funding CIP budget for FY25 in that $40 million range, something more that we can accomplish. And part of that is because we're resource constrained. We're not funding constrained at this time. What that means is our ability to get contractors on board or our ability to allocate work to our own crews prohibits us from accomplishing more of our CIP projects. So what we wanted to do was bring this forward to you, talk a little bit about that CIP fund balance that we have. It's about $40 million now. And that those funds are needed for future projects. And one of the things we wanted to do is give you sort of a look over the horizon of what we're seeing that's coming up. It's not yet necessarily in our 5-year CIPs, but the things that, as you'll see, you'll recognize them. And the idea is that while we're resource constrained now, we don't want to be financially constrained in the future. So a couple of pictures here to remind us. So these are some comparisons we did on each of the next slides. It's comparing 1996 to 2024. So this is the Port of Brownsville. You can see back in 24, a lot of the green field and the brown fields there. By 2024, a lot of that has been filled in with development. All that is industrial growth. This is a mix of our electric area and our water area. As you can see, there's been significant development over the last, 20, I should know, it's I get married that year. 28 years. Here's the Sunrise Mall area. And you can see there's a lot of infield development, especially look around the expressway there. That's all, commercial development, home development in that whole area around Sunwall to the right of the expressway. And again, this is 96 to 2024. And if you look to the east of there, or excuse me, to the west of there, you saw some roads had been laid out about 96, and by 24, it's all been infilled. And again, you can see the expressway there. These developers, while they may take a long time to develop, they eventually get there. And all of this it's good news, and it means that's more of our service territory. We have to have more resources, more infrastructure to serve all of them. And that's history. Kind of looking in the future, we have Port of Brownsville. We have a number of developments going on out there. Of course, next decade, Rio Grande, Forza Steel, the ammonia producers, hydrogen, steel mills, the business park that we're putting in infrastructure on right now. GBIC has two large areas that they're going in. That's going to bring business. SpaceX, they're a water customer, wholesale water customers. And Madera, the 1,300-acre development off the expressway, which is within the city. When we look at this, we're looking at right now our demand is about 320 megawatts. So that's how much power we're developing instantaneously to our customers at our peak. We're looking at somewhere between 600 to 2.5 gigawatts in the future. That's somewhere between a 2 and 8 times increase in power that we have to provide. When you look at the water, we're about 50 million gallons per day now. We're looking somewhere between 90 and 110, or somewhat, doubling that capacity as well. And so these are based upon estimates that those developers are giving us, and that we see. So we're not sure when or where, but a lot of these things will come to fruition, and so we can see large growth in the need for services. And what we did for this sort of analysis.
Can I interrupt?
24 to 28, excuse me.
We have Dr. Samota.
Yeah, sorry, I might have missed this. So is this, like, what's the horizon? What's like, is that 10, 20 years for this
Some
potential
of these
action?
are already still going in the ground. All of these are things that we're currently talking with customers about. So it's gotten to that point. Some of them have not got funding, but like Madera, they're laying infrastructure. SpaceX, we just signed a new wholesale agreement with them. The industrial parks are signing. Forza Steel next decade. So these are fairly real opportunities that are coming up. I think we're going to have a little bit more on that in the executive session, but these are ones that we think have real legs. To help us scope out this analysis, we looked at our 24 to 28, that's our 5-year CIP, our current spend plan. That has $203 million of spending in there. There are additional capital projects that we did not include in that CIP plan. We add all those, that's another $136 million of plans that are over the horizon. And then we have a number of strategic planning initiatives that are underway, including our integrated resources plan, which is how we're going to produce power. Our decommissioning of Silas Ray, that plant dates back to the 60s. It's the most likely site of new generation, but we'll have to decommission it at some point. Our SRWA, the optimization and expansion, we talk a lot about that. That plan is in there. And then we have the water and wastewater master plan, which is coming up at the end of the year. So all of these are going to generate capital spending requirements for us in the future over the next decade. Like I said earlier, the current constraints is really on project execution, getting resources to develop a statement of work, to do the contracting, our own internal crews to actually do the physical labor. And of course, there's still some equipment manufacturing, which has some long lead times, especially our transformers, can be anywhere from 2 to 3 years. However, looking on our horizon, even if we had all the resources, there could be a time where we become financially constrained, meaning that we'd be over leveraged. We don't want to borrow too much. And so we need to make sure that we can financially handle the work once our resources are no longer the constraint. And the way we finance these are a number of ways. Obviously, there's grants, and that's for specific projects or parts of a project. Short-term debt, which is commercial paper. We issue that in the immediate terms to fund capital projects as are ongoing. And then periodically, Mr. Pettis and his team issue long-term revenue bonds that pay off that commercial paper, and that relieves that. And we have that for the next several years. Impact fees. These are contribution data construction. It's used for water and wastewater, and it's really just related to new development in that area. And of course, we have line extension fees, which are also contributions in data construction from new customers, and that's to extend our service lines to them as often as pay as you go function. So those are the main ways that we fund our capital projects. And in this list, we've identified about $744 million of projects that we think could potentially hit over the next 10 years. You've seen some of these already, but you have some additional ones. We're going to have to build some sort of generation coming up pretty soon. The river pump, we've got the design in, but this is for the construction. Water expansion, electric systems, everything requires a lot of capital spending. And we've identified potential funding sources in this 10-year plan. And that includes about $40 million of grants or reimbursements. A lot of that on the water wastewater side. Contribution data construction. Again, these are customers. That's the growth pays for growth concept. Then there's debt, which is a commercial paper and the long-term debt. And then finally, cash. Cash is important because it keeps us from being over leveraged, keeps the debt to capitalization level viable, and it reduces your borrowing and your interest cost. So we're going to have to come up with $744 million. And so over the next 10 years, we're looking at about $241 million of cash. That's to keep our current debt to capitalization levels and keep that optimal for a single A or double A rated utility. And so right now we have about 38, maybe a little bit more than that in our capital fund balance. But what you don't see below there is sort of the future requirement. And that's $203 million over the next 10 years. So that's a big iceberg underneath the water that we're looking at. And so as we come into our budget, we want you thinking about this, developing approach to how do we fund these capital projects that we have an obligation to serve our customers. A couple of things we're doing here is, ensure we're doing continuous planning, resource and system planning, the integrated resource planning, the water and wastewater plan, coordinate and cooperate with our partners and neighbors. We serve a lot of different governmental entities from the city to the county to the port, working with them and developing a flexible plan because we never know what's going to happen. We could have a big boom cycle here and a lot of those potential customers could become real. We could go into a slight recession and things would slow down for a while. So we have to be flexible. We're trying to staff it at sustainable levels. We know we're resource constrained, but we don't want to go out and double the workforce because 2 years down the road, we may have excess capacity at that point. We're going to improve our contract development management oversight. We're working on that. And finally, we're investing in project and asset management, taking care of what we have and doing it smartly. It's one thing we want to do here. Finally, maintain affordability while using that cash is when we have to protect our existing customers from speculation. We could go out and invest a lot of things, hope that people show up. And in the end, that debt would be straddled by our existing customers if that new growth doesn't show up. We want to establish rates that are transparent, recover our costs. Finally, use that available cash effectively. What projects offer our customers the best return on their investment? So every time we come up with a project, we have to think about that is what's best for our existing customers. How it's their cash, how are we going to invest that? So with that, we'll be bringing forward to you another 5-year CIP plan as a part of the budget cycle. And we'll visit some of these projects again. And we're going to try to get our CIP plan, we're working on it now, down to a CIP that we can actually accomplish with the resources we have. Any questions?
There's a lot of information, but I know that we've talked about catching up with the CIP. Several in the past, we've talked about it quite a bit. Are there any one or two items, Mark, that really that's come to your mind that are remarkable that we should be concerned with?
Oh, water. And so we have some projects that are not yet in the CIP, the SRWA, both the optimization, some of those projects are anyway, and the expansion. That is, it's more expensive water, but it's readily available to us. So that's something we're going to look to invest. I know we're working on some grants or some loans on that. We'll have to work with our partners at SRWA on that. The other one is our integrated resource plan. So right now, you've heard a lot of large numbers about the power requirements within ERCOT. Thousands and thousands of megawatts that are needed. And down here, we do have some constraint. Traditionally, we thought about bite-sized chunks, 20 megawatts, 30 megawatts. Just for an example, in order to access the Texas Energy Fund, your project has to have at least 100 megawatts. And so we may have to think bigger next time we invest in generation here. I still think owning generation is the best hedge and the best way to maintain effective rates for our customers. But that takes investment on the front end, and it's long term. It's nothing that happens in 6 months or a year. These are 5-year type projects that require. So those are things that if something's going to keep me up at night, is making sure you have water, making sure we have power.
Thank you for that. Mark, just for the public, what is the current consumption of electrical power for the city? I ask this question all the time.
Consumption? I don't have those numbers,
I
but
mean, what do we use in the generation? About 3?
So if you look at one of the slides, it's 320 was our peak power. So he's asking for the whole city of Brownsville, not the
oh,
city.
the whole city?
Yeah, the whole city.
I think our peak was, I want to say 317 megawatts.
Good.
So that's instantaneously power at one time.
We always need 317 to keep the lights on
Yes,
for everyone.
at a minimum, but I expect it to climb above 320 this summer.
Any other questions or comments by the board? Thank you. Thank you. Next item would be financial report for Mr. Pettis.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. My name is Mike Pettis. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be presenting the financial performance report as of May 31, 2024. So here we've got an executive summary that focuses really on 7 categories. Each has their own gauge meter, red representing poor, yellow average, and green good. So starting off with the flow of funds, year to date, we did see $8.8 million has been generated to fund capital improvement projects. Our debt service coverage is at 2.61 times, well above the 1.25 times minimum requirement. The fuel purchase and energy charge, which is currently at 7.841 cents, has generated an over recovery of $6.5 million as of May 31st. And this will certainly be used to offset some future market uncertainty. On the COB cash transfer, we did generate some additional revenues over the budget and over last year's. And so this has generated an additional $450,000 in cash transfer to the city of Brownsville. So we're doing very well, and the city should be very happy. On the personnel and non-personnel expenses, those came in lower than budgeted. Those primarily due to some current vacancies and some timing expense issues. Right, so we're doing well there. BPUB's average electric bill is higher than the average municipally owned utility bill, but lower than the average investor-owned utility bill for the 1,000 kWh user. Our current electric bill is at about $139.48. On our CIP spending, PUB continues to lag a little bit behind where we need to be. As of year to date, we've spent $22.7 million, which represents 24.79% of the fiscal year 2024 approved plan of $91.7 million. And so at the May board meeting, we did discuss in detail the obstacles that we are facing and what the plan going forward was for mitigating these concerns. Right, and so the main driving factor is the lack of internal and external resources. As Mark just pointed out a while ago, there's a lot of activity in the city, a lot of construction at the Port of Brownsville, a lot of construction at SpaceX. And so that has stretched our local contractors very thin. And so it's very hard to find that external resource to come in and help us. Continuing on, all key financial metrics are currently in compliance, so we're doing great there as well. Here we have the condensed statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. This is following generally accepted accounting principles. This is the same statement that you would find or see in the annual comprehensive financial report. And so here we compare the year-to-date through May 2024 as compared to the same period last year, May 2023. And so starting out with operating revenues of $141,589,209. This represents about $3.3 million decrease from last year's year-to-date. Now, the year-to-date sales actually increased $6.7 million over last year. But as you all remember, we did use about $9.5 million of the additional rate stabilization funds to pay down the customer production cost in November and December of 2023 as approved by the board. Moving on, year-to-date operating expenses were $126,770,090. This, we did see an increase of about $5.4 million over last year. And the primary driver here was attributed to the increase in personnel cost from the implementation of the compensation study. So we end up in line 3 operating income of $14,819,119. Subtracting out non-operating net non-operating expenses, $9,894,703. We arrive at income before capital contributions, $4,924,416. Before I continue, we do see a huge difference there on the net non-operating expenses. There's a drop of about $33 million. And what that represents really, it's in May of 2023 is when we issued the Tenasca Equity Fund distributions out to the customers. And that represented about $31.4 million being issued out. So that's why we see that huge decrease there. So once we add in capital contributions, $7,771,330, we end up with an increase in net position year to date of $12,695,746. Here we have a condensed summary of revenues and expenses. This is on the flow of funds basis. That's in compliance with the ordinance and the bond ordinance. Pretty much, you could say it's a cash basis. We do compare year-to-date activity to the year-to-date budget. Starting off with operating revenues, year-to-date actuals were $143,544,868. These were $15.1 million under our budget. Now, one thing to recollect is that this line item here includes both base and fuel revenues, or fuel revenues being offset directly by our fuel expenses, right? And so on the base rate revenues, we did see an increase of $1.5 million, while the fuel and the off-system sales decreased by approximately $16.6 million, representing the total decrease of $15.1 million. Other revenues year to date were $18,321,779. This came in $4 million above budget, and they primarily attributable to increased ancillary services generated through the ERCOT market and some increase in interest earnings. And so here we arrive at line 3 gross revenues of $161,866,647. We back out the fuel and Southwood Regional Water Authority contributions of $52,366,569, and we end up with adjusted gross revenues of $109,500,078. This is the basis for the 10% city Brownsville cash transfer calculation. And then once we back out other requirements, which include O&M, non-operating debt service of $79,055,243, and also backing out the city of Brownsville's usage of $4,026,000, we end up at line 7, balance available after requirements of $26,418,410. From here, we back out the transfer to the city of Brownsville, net of their usage of $6,923,583, and we ended up with the balance available for transfers out of $19,494,827. Now, those $19 million were used to fund $10,726,000 for our budgeted CIP, and leaving a balance of $8,767,942 that flows in to replenish the improvement fund year to date. So that concludes this monthly presentation. Following the direction of the board, we will be doing a full presentation, financial presentation on a quarterly basis. So the next quarterly report will be due for the June 30th, 2024, and that will be made at the August board meeting. There's a lot of other statements that are included and a lot of other information that's also included in there for board review. At this time, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Good presentation, a lot of information. Any comments or questions? Dr. Samora?
If you can go back to the dashboard. Yeah, so this FPEC fund, we have an over recovery right now.
Correct.
Right? And also we have a higher than average bill, right? And these two things are related. Is that right?
Yes, yes. The FPIC is the variable piece of the rate and the electric bill.
So that means that as we adjust the FPIC, since we don't need to have an over recovery all the time, then the average bill will be lower.
Correct.
So we can expect, and when will that adjustment take place?
This will be an item that will be discussed in closed session, but I mean, I could say that we do have an opportunity to reduce that FPIC rate in September of 2023.
So the lower bills won't come until
such time that we actually reduce the FPIC. I mean, it really on a month to month, depending on market conditions. I mean, we could see a bad month like we did last August of 2023, and we could easily end up with an under recovery. And so we just have to monitor that on a month to month basis. And that's done through our risk oversight committee. But with estimates that we're currently using over the next 18 months, we do have an opportunity to reduce that rate in September 2024.
Are there any other ways to reduce that rate? To help customers during the summer season?
The only other thing that we can do, and which is what we did back in November and December, and the board approved, was we actually used some prior year surplus to fund the fuel sub account that then paid down that over collection that we had from customers, and so that provides some relief to their customers.
And another question. So when we so at the rates that we have right now, the 10% transfer applies, right, to the rate that we have right now.
Well, just
With like
the base,
rate.
just the base. I remember the actual fuel revenue is offset by a direct fuel expense, and so that nets out. It's not part of the gross adjusted revenue.
So it doesn't matter if we are like overcompensating or undercompensating with this FPEC.
It does
The-
not affect the city transfer at all. The FPIC rate does not affect the transfer to the city.
Okay.
So here, under operating revenues, like I mentioned before, we've got both base revenues and the fuel rate. And the fuel rate will always, I mean, the fuel revenue will always match our fuel expense. So it's a direct offset. So when we arrive at line 7, the adjusted gross revenues, it's netted out at 0.
Okay.
The FPIC.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, I'm listening to Dr. Samora, and I've asked this question myself, and it's a complicated one on how we can reduce the rates for our ratepayers, particularly in the middle of the hot summer where the consumption is really high. I don't think there's a magical answer for that. And then a possible discussion about using reserves, that's a concern to me. But hopefully things will remain stable. And the amount of over, how much was that? $6 million?
$6.5 million at the end of May.
Small amount, as we apply to the big picture. But thank you for that, presentation. Any other comments? Then we'll move on. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, we have a presentation from your, grants people.
Yes, the next presenter is coming up and it would be on the grants.
Okay. For Taylor and, Ms. Suarez.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Conrad Taylor. I'm the grants coordinator for Brownsville PUB. And grant staff within financial services would like to conduct an overview of some of the current grant pursuits, as long as some of the key changes that we're currently working on, as well as closing out with some items to consider when reaching out to us in order to pursue grants for given needs. And so before we do that, one of the things that we felt was useful is kind of going over some of the functions that we perform here at BPUB. And those can be split into research, pre-award, and post-award functions. So we assist with the collaboration of departments within PUB as well as external agencies to help identify needs and projects. We also assist in the drafting and application development for local, state, federal, and private grant programs. And we also assist with the compliance and reporting required for most of these grant programs. And so one of the key changes that we're going to be implementing within financial services is the creation of the active grants report. And that report can be summarized into 3 sections. The first one being active grants, which provides a general summary and status of all existing grants currently active at BPUB. Pending grants, which are grants that have been submitted and we're currently waiting correspondence on, and then active application development for potential grants in the future. And so just a key summary, or just some summaries regarding some of the active grants we have ongoing. The first one being a reclamation grant that we had received in the amount of $5 million for the retrofitting and replacement of roughly 40,000 meters. We had received a $5 million award, and we were issued a notice to proceed for this project in September of last year. We also had an update regarding the budgeted amount for the Restore program for the town Resaca watershed. Originally, it was about $4.6 million grant, and that has since been increased to about a $6.6 million appropriation. And then we recently received a subaward through the DOE APPA cooperative agreement for implementation of ICS, which helps the mitigation of cybersecurity threats within our SCADA. And then we're also currently working with the city of Brownsville through a interlocal agreement in the amount of $14.5 million for key water, wastewater improvements in the downtown area. Here are some of the grants that we were awarded. However, for given variety of reasons, we're pending the execution of a financial assistance agreement, a couple of them from EPA, the first one being a $500,000 grant for key improvements to Water Plant 1. And then the second being the Solar for All program through EPA, which we had submitted an $11 million request, but we've since received word from EPA that that amount is going to be reduced to an about $8.6 million award. And then finally, we received word that we're going to be receiving a $2 million grant for the issuance of Contract 1 for the improvements and restorations to Resaca de la Guerra. And so these are some of the current grant pursuits that are either under development or have already been submitted, and we're currently waiting correspondence. On the left-hand column, we have some of the federal grants that we're actively pursuing. The first one being through FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program for backup power generation at the SRWA Wellfield. Secondly, we're currently working on application development for the grid resiliency grants to assist in the rebuild of the Luma Alta substation. And we have a couple of grants through the Bureau of Reclamation. The first one being a grant that was submitted on June 25th for improvements along the Resaca de la Guerra, and that application was developed by Hafen Associates. And then we're currently working with Corello Engineering for the development of a feasibility study and the subsequent application submission for the SRWA optimization. On the right-hand side, we have a few programs we're currently working on for submittal under the Texas Water Development Board. In January, we had submitted a application for technical assistance for the development of a water wastewater asset management plan. And we are actively developing applications for the EDAP program and the lead service line replacement program. And we received word last week that the Cameron County Commissioners Court has selected the first-time water wastewater improvement project for the Central Estates Colonia as the primary project to be submitted through TDA. And so for more insight on some of the work we're doing with the newly acquired consultants, here's Miriam.
Evening. BPUB has hired iParametrics, a grant consulting firm that will assist in finding relevant grant opportunities at the federal and state level. In order to do that, iParametrics and the BPUB grants team conducted a comprehensive needs assessment of the organization by individually meeting with 14 departments and divisions, all of which have been completed as of last week. The next steps include in-depth research to identify funding sources based on the needs assessment and possible assistance from iParametrics to compile key grant applications. So if you've identified a project, received a grant lead from someone in your network, or just have general questions about grants, we're here to help. And to better assist you, we recommend considering a few things when thinking about grants. First, there's a variety of eligible activities such as capital improvements, planning, water and energy conservation, and much more. What we'll need to draft the application include a project needs statement, goals and objectives, project activities, a timeline, budget, and metrics. And lastly, some things to consider when thinking about applying for a grant is that grants take time. It is estimated that a grant award notification can take anywhere from 6 months to a year or more. Grants take effort and teamwork. From grant development to closing, we need input from multiple departments at all stages. And grants require attention since each grant and grantor is unique and has its own set of rules and requirements. We hope you have found this information insightful, and this concludes our presentation. We're available to answer any questions.
Any comment? Dr. Shalala?
Thank you. Can you go back a couple of slides? The Water Smart,
Yeah.
the Bureau of Reclamation. What is this environmental water resources for Resaca de la Guerra? Can you explain more?
So we had reached out to HAP Associates to develop an application for the submittal of a $3 million request for bank improvements, dredging, removal of invasive species along key segments along Resaca de la Guerra.
Does that require a matching?
Yes, the match is 25%. The total project submittal was about 4.6 million, with 3 million of that coming as the grant amount.
And would the matching, would the congressional approved money, would that be used for the matching, or will it be another source?
The congressional appropriation is specifically for contract one for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project. It's along the same Resaca system.
Mhm.
However, this is for a different area within the Resaca.
So the matching funds would come from where? From our local funds?
Yes, this,
You said it was 2 million or a million? How much did you say?
1.6 million would be our match.
I think this might be something that we need to talk about more.
Marilyn, can you make a note of this so we can bring it to the?
We can bring it back to the board at another time. This wasn't an item that was previously board approved, adopted, and we'll go back to the actual agenda item and provide all the information and the segment of that item.
Could this be provided to the Facilities and Programs Committee?
We can bring it back to them to what was provided in the intent of that grant.
Okay, thank you.
I believe it was on the main meeting. You may have not been present at that.
I think all the information is great. I think the public needs to understand and needs to see what y'all are doing, for PUB. So keep up the hard work. We have some questions on this matter. We'll we'll get to ask some questions about this particular item. Anything else on this item from any of the board members?
I want to say congratulations for all the money that was received.
No, it's been good. It's
that's-
good.
Yeah, that's great. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last item on this, letter G, Ryan Greenfield is going to give us a PubCap update. Oh, I'm sorry. Letter E, I apologize. General Manager Procurement Summary, Diane Salter. Diane, you got to just get up and tell me that I'm off.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. I'm going to give you the General Manager's Procurement Authorization Report for the second quarter, April through June of 2024. The majority of the purchases were competitively bid out, or they were a sole source. So the Water and Wastewater Administration was $744,708.49. The electric was $1,071,449.19 for a grand total amount for water, wastewater administration and electric of $1,816,157.68. Any questions?
Well, any questions from any of the board members? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, who's next? Mr. Greenfield, I'm sorry. Ryan Greenfield is here to present us an update on the PubCap.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Rendon, board members, Mayor. I'm Eliza Vasquez. I'm the chair for PubCap, and we have our update from January to May meetings. These are the key areas that we try to focus on: community education for the customer and drought awareness. Under community and education, we had more training about utilities, the integrated resource plan that we're going to get involved with, explanations of the Texas electrical market, the electrical rates, and education on pre-treatment and grease traps. On the customer side, we had an emphasis put on the assistance programs, the drawing contest, job recruitment, scholarships, payment arrangements, and the new bill format that came out. Every month, we have a presentation to get us up to speed on the drought and the reservoir levels. We've had explanations on PUB's water system, discussions on the drought restrictions, and presentations on how to conserve water. These are a few photos of PubCap getting involved in the community. There were several members that were at the water tower ribbon cutting. Several members of PubCap volunteered at Sombrero Fest to man the PUB booth. Several members volunteered to be on the float, PUB float during shower days. And then several PUB members volunteered to read the essays for the scholarship program. This is the latest water and wastewater tour that we took that I attended. And we had a couple of board members that were there also. And then this is what we're going to focus on in July. Of course, we'll have our drought update. We'll have the drinking water quality report and the IRP update. We'll be doing that on a monthly basis. Any questions?
Any questions on this presentation? I would certainly like to commend Ms. Vasquez for her commitment and volunteer work on this very important committee. Thank you for always being there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Can I have?
You have a question?
Yeah.
I think Dr. Samota might have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In your opinion, since you get to hear from a lot of customers, you're, very actively involved in hearing whenever there's a customer service issue, what can we do better?
What I've asked the PUB members to do is to go out in the community and bring those questions to us because we don't have a lot of the community to attend the meetings, unfortunately. So they've been coming back with questions and concerns that the public has. And so we had two or three in the last 2 or 3 months come forward. One of the PubCap members come forward with questions or concerns. And so we were able to connect those questions with the right department or the right department head. And then Ryan is following up to make sure that that connection is made and those questions are answered or those problems are taken care of.
I see. So could it be that maybe not enough customers know that it's an option? Or,
But yes, but I don't know what else we can do because we try, it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, it's on the website.
on the bill, right? I think,
I don't know whether it's on the bill or not.
We have had it on the bill as well.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to consideration and possible approval of a sponsorship request from Gladys Porter Zoo.
Chair, members of the board, I'm Ryan Greenfeld, Communications and PR Manager. I'm here to introduce a request for sponsorship for the Gladys Porter Zoo in the amount of $20,000. I do have a member of the zoo here as well, if y'all have any questions about the sponsorship request.
Thank you. I know there's information in our packets. Is there any questions about this proposed sponsorship of how much? 20,000?
20.
Okay. Any comments or ready to make a motion? All
I make a
right.
motion to approve that.
I'll entertain motions to move this forward. Dr. Samato makes the first motion. Do we have a second?
Second that.
Second. All those in favor of moving this forward, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This motion approves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to number 5, consideration possible action for bid award for the annual supply of water and wastewater inventory material.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. This presentation is for the consideration and possible action to award bids for our annual water and wastewater inventory. Our bid number 4124. Consistent with state law, PUB staff recommends the award to be to the lowest responsible bidders identified in the corrected board summary for a majority of the total amount to be awarded, which is $5,433,898.52. However, we received identical bids for 2 commodities, which requires the casting of lots. Well, the casting of lots is in the Texas Local Government Code, which states that if bids are identical in nature and the lowest and best bids, and if there's only one bidder is a resident of the city, then PUB must select that bidder. However, if both or neither are residents, state law requires that the casting of lots to select the awardee in a manner prescribed by the board. All qualified bidders or their legal representatives may be present. So in the past, we've done where, I think you've been here, that we have an envelope and we have the names of the vendors and we select it that way. So we'll go ahead and proceed with the water and wastewater. The first item is number 80, ACT Pipe or Ferguson.
ACT Pipe and Supply.
The
Okay.
next one is 83. ACT Pipe or Ferguson.
Bingo.
Ferguson Waterworks.
Okay, so PUB staff recommends approval of bid award for the annual supply of water and wastewater inventory materials to the following low bidders meeting specifications. Ferguson Enterprises of Mission, Texas, in the amount of $976,933.42. Warren, Maine of Brownsville in the amount of $974,945.50. ACT Pipe and Supply of Mission, Texas, in the amount of $1,705,633.30. Our Works Pipe and Supply of Brownsville in the amount of $1,528,321.38. More Supply of Brownsville in the amount of $199,804.94. And the casting of lots in the amount of $48,259.98 for a grand total amount not to exceed $5,433,898.52.
We have a recommendation, you've already cast. Any comments or any questions on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Dr. Zamora. We have a second. We have a second.
second.
We have a second here. Alex, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against this item? This item passes unanimously. Your next one, do you have, Deanna? You have the next one also?
Yes, the next two.
Okay.
This is the consideration and possible action to approve the bid award for the annual supply of general inventory stock, and we have to follow the same process. of
Okay.
casting lots. We have two items. It's a G314 to Sheffield Supply and Equipment and Annexter.
Annixter Inc.
The next item is G0332 CC Distributors or Annexter.
One.
Annixter Inc.
The BPUB staff recommends approval of bid award for the annual supply of general inventory stock to the following low bidders meeting specs. Triple S Steel doing business as Alamo Iron Works of Brownsville in the amount of $87,125.96. Texas Meter and Device in the amount of $6,285.40. Sheffield Supply and Equipment in the amount of $3,259.20. Check Line in the amount of $4,540.80. CC Distributors in the amount of $94,375.60. Northern Safety Company in the amount of $30,494.26. Annexter in the amount of $217,024.36. Export Express in the amount of $5,880. Gateway Printing in the amount of $9,760. Foreign Main in the amount of $1,900.80. And casting of lots in the amount of $7,004 for a grand total amount not to exceed $467,650.38.
Okay, we have a recommendation by the administration. All those in favor, or would anybody like to make a motion on this?
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Dr. Zamora,
Second.
second by Mr. Mediat. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, this item passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, item 7 is for the consideration and possible action for bid award for the annual supply of electrical inventory material. It requires the casting of lots also for two items, the E125, Texas Electric or KBS.
KBS Electric.
And E 639 to KBS or Check Line.
Check Line Inc.
BPV staff recommends approval of bid award for the annual supply of electric inventory material to the low bidders meeting specifications as follows. Stuart C. Irby of Bastrop, Texas, in the amount of $361,982.84. Priester Mellon Nicholson of San Antonio in the amount of $39,875.45. Texas Electric Co-op of Georgetown, Texas, in the amount of $111,832.75. KBS Electric of Austin in the amount of $567,406.45. And Tech Line of San Antonio, Texas, in the amount of $348,434.55, plus casting of lots in the amount of $1,190 for a grand total amount not to exceed $1,430,722.04.
Okay, we've gone through the casting. We have a recommendation by administration on this item. We have any discussion or?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Alex, second.
I'll second.
Second by Dr. Samoda. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those against? This item passes unanimously. Thank you, Deanna. So that completes all the items for individual consideration. Before we move into a closed session, let me read the following. Meeting with the board legal counsel for advice about contemplated and pending court and administrative litigation and on matters in which the duty of the attorney under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct conflicts with Chapter 551, Section 551.071, including but not limited to the following: reports of local and special counsel, discussion and consultation with board counsel regarding legal issues pertaining to BTX, fiber project installation repairs, negotiations to extend facilities to potential customer within the Port of Brownsville, ongoing negotiations related to the potential extension of facilities for SpaceX, retention of counsel for specialized matters and priorities in the Texas legislature, consultation with legal counsel on ESC Engineering, Inc., contract related to the airport's substation, Section 551.071, presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation of information upon pricing of purchase power, generation, and fuel, and their impact upon the fuel purchased energy and marketing charge, Section 551.086, presentation and discussion related to large-scale business development opportunities pursuant to Texas Government Code Chapter 551, Section 551.087, Section 551.086, and Section 551.071. Last item, energy risk management policy improvements and limit structure updates, Section 551.086. That being read, do I have a motion to go into closed session?
To go into closed session.
We
Second.
have a motion by Mr. Vidian and a second by the mayor. All those in favor of going into closed session, say aye.
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 Aye. And all those against? Going into closed session. So well. You did? Did you go each of them security or what? What time is it? Okay, we are back from executive session. It is, what time is it?
7:49.
Okay, 7:49. We do have three items that Mr. Pequeño will be assisting the board with
Yes,
to take action. One,
first item requiring action is one, to authorize the general manager to retain specialized legal counsel, subject to overview and approval of the board chair and vice chair as discussed in executive.
all right, do we want to take them one at a time, one?
Yes.
Take them one, okay, we have a motion to approve that. To approve. Move to approve by Mr. Varela, and a second.
I second.
Dr. Samota, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all those against, this item passes unanimously. Next one,
Next item requiring action is item 2. The action needed is approval of the execution of an amendment to contract with ESC Engineering, Inc. related to the airport substation, as discussed in executive.
okay, we have a motion. Do we have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Okay, Mr. Nahara votes to, makes a motion to approve this item. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cowan. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, nay. This motion passes unanimously. Next item,
The last item needing action is item number 5. Action needed is the approval of the energy risk management policy changes as discussed in executive.
okay, we have an item to consider. We have a motion.
I so move.
We have a motion by Mr. Cowan,
I'll
second
second.
by Dr. Samora. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those against? This motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Pequeño. Consideration and action on future agenda items, discussion and or request for future agenda items. Any comments, recommendations on this?
Since we're finishing early, I think, I just.
Okay, Dr.
Oh, we can just talk now. No, I don't have any items. Thank you, everybody.
All right, Dr. Samora, thank you for your comments. I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion to adjourn by Dr. Samora, a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Varela. All those in favor to adjourn this meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.